And of course, whenever possible, free and open source software is the way to go because we have no budget. And usually, I've found if you just put it out there that you need whatever you need, people will donate. We've had quad proc compact servers with RAID and gigs of RAM donated to us for free, and the space and bandwidth to co-locate them. Usually, because let's face it, if you're even a modest-sized colo, the bandwidth that such a site's going to take up is going to be lost in the noise on their MRTG. And also they get the benefit of saying that they support this local group, because it's really cool to be involved with one of these things. Everyone wants to be involved with this. That's what's neat about it, is you wind up having tons of allies. And as far as hardware, remember to back stuff up because it's donated and it's old. And yeah, been there, done that, or rather not done that and paid for it. It's also crucial to have a space to meet where you can keep all of your gear, keep all of the esoteric tools, the coax crimpers, antennae, built nodes, whatever. Trust me, you're going to get more stuff than you ever thought you would. Just, even stuff that's just donated to you. PCs, if you say, hey, we need to outfit the office, people will all of a sudden say, we've got all these old couches, we've got a coffee maker, a microwave oven, and you'll have like 5 of them. That too. So you really want a space that you can use as a workshop. Now, granted, a lot of people who are big into nonprofits, they're going to say, we want the office downtown. We want, there's this quaint old high-rise in the historical part of town, and it would be great. Well, yeah, except for the fact that it's, and I'm speaking from experience here, except for the fact that it's a nationally historically registered building, which means you can't run Cat5. And, oh, you want to use wireless? That's a good idea, except that it's made out of stone. So, and, being on the 5th floor of the back side, because that's really where the cheap offices are, is where you're looking across to another building that's on the other side of the alley, you're not really accessible to the public. Nobody can know that you're there. It's kind of imposing to walk up to this granite monolith and, walk in like you're, Neo in the Matrix or whatever. And what you really want is a space that's maybe 1-2 stories tall in a light industrial or on the edges of a residential area, and ideally the residential area that you're working in, so you don't have far to lug all this stuff. And you want it to be friendly. You want it to be a place where people feel like it's cool to hang out. But at the same time, you need to be mindful of your own physical security, the security of your space, and the security of your systems and hardware, because it's, kind of like this place, most people are honest, but stuff unfortunately walks off. As far as, and big plus, big win, 24-hour access if you can get it. As far as selecting the site of your prototype network, you want to pick an area that serves the local neighborhood. Like I said, something along the lines of Main Street in a small town, or the section of town that functions like its own small town with a residential area behind it, because then you can have your hotspots in something like a neighborhood cafe or a bar or a restaurant where you can put your sticker on the window and have public visibility, which is crucial so that people know that you're in the area. And then also be providing access through rooftop routers beyond that. And basically, it's very easy to get a hotspot into a place with a lot of foot traffic like a cafe. Because if you break down the numbers for them about how much the hardware costs and how much DSL per month costs, and do that on a per day basis, as Simpson Garfinkel pointed out in like 2002 or so, back then when DSL was much more expensive and hardware was much more expensive, a cafe would only have to sell 1 more coffee a day in order to pay for the connection. If they sold 2, they were making a profit off of their wireless node. Turns out they tend to sell more like 10 more. So when you start putting it in numbers like that a business person can understand, it's very easy to convince them to get 6 megs of DSL in and then put it a hotspot and put on a rooftop node, and then that can start serving the neighborhood in its immediate vicinity as one of the trunk nodes that leaf nodes that don't have internet access themselves can connect to. And like I had said with the T1 argument, like with Quest and like that, be flexible to whatever, be willing to work with whatever you have available. If you can, even if it seems a little bit weird, if you can swing a deal where you can get a win-win situation with various parties in the community, be willing to do that, even if it doesn't fit what you consider your nominal business model to be, at least in the beginning. Because once you've proven you know what you're doing, support from the community will be strong to overwhelming, seriously. And you'll find it much easier to actually get money from donors. And what I mean by this is, like just as an example, the Open Society Institute, which I believe is run by George Soros, donated something on the order, or granted something on the order of several $100,000 to Champaign-Urbana Wireless for them to develop their software. So if you can show that, and the network that they saw was 6 SOCRIS boxes and 8 DBI antennae mounted on people's houses. And so basically you want to build your network as you're able. As far as meetings, I really like the idea. It seems to work well to have, if you can swing it, a weekly meeting that's about 3 to 4 hours long. Now, granted, you don't expect the same people to show up every week. You want your group to be big enough that if only 4 people can get together, then you'll keep maintaining the momentum that way, and you spread out the work to a broader group of people, which means it's less likely that any one person will burn out. Okay, and you want to maintain, I'll skip some stuff here. As far as maintaining the momentum, like I just said, make sure that no one person's shouldering the burden, because if they're the core of your group and they burn out, it just goes away. Make sure that you have enough members that, okay, I said that. And you want to decentralize and delegate as much as possible. Okay, let's see here. That's pretty much, I think I'll end it there and then take questions if anyone has them. Yes?
What do you think of the Meraki box?
I'm sorry, could you?
The Meraki project, they're like decentralized access point, and then it's like runs some version of Bluetooth, but it's like $60.
I actually haven't heard that. Is this somewhat similar to the phone or Finero network? Okay.
No, it's a small box, but it's incredibly inexpensive. Early when it came out, a little bit about what I know about the Meraki is it's a small, inexpensive box. I think it runs about $60. When it first came out, maybe 3-4 years ago, I guess. I mean, someone correct me. I think the limitation was how much bandwidth, how much throughput for data, but I think they might have gone over it. But just a few months ago, I think the QWinware, the software that they developed in Urbana, they were able to port to it, so it should really open up some things a little bit. But that's a good question because I was going to ask Michael the same.
Mark.
Mark, sorry.
Okay, yeah. Well, in general, I personally prefer hardware that you're integrating yourself, like the SOCRIS, because it's more likely that sort of thing will stick around longer as embedded hardware than any particular. Now, granted, I mean, I haven't heard the Meraki, but I know that there's Flickinger's company, Mepis, that's made a commitment to making hardware for projects like this. So the hardware is becoming more and more available, but in both of the groups I worked with, we've been burned by finding a really cool piece of hardware that did what we thought, exactly what we wanted, and then finding out that it was end of life, end of service, we can't get support, we don't know, and now we've decided that this is going to be a major part of our network, and it's going to fail in a year or 4 years or whatever, because eventually these things are existing in a harsh environment typically. So I tend to like to keep everything as open as possible because then I'm in control rather than the hardware manufacturer. Any other questions?
You are now responsible to hand it to the next person. Remember to talk close to the mic.
Alrighty then. In the light of municipal wireless, for example, in Michigan, the Oakland County Wireless Project, which is a mostly privately backed venture, where do you see community wireless integrating with that, or in addition to that, how do you see those two coexisting, or can they coexist?
I personally think they can coexist because even, well, first of all, Oakland Wireless is an initiative that was conceived by L. Brooks Patterson, the county executive of Oakland County in Michigan, where Stormgren and I both happen to live. And what he wanted was, he wants a wireless network, actually, I think the term he used was hotspot, which I hope he doesn't mean this, covering the entire 900 square mile county. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this area is woodland. So I'm not sure how much the woodland creatures are needing email. Basically, what I see happening is that community wireless tends to go where it's needed. There's a natural affinity between independent coffee shops, independent businesses and ventures like that that want to draw people in because it's a draw to have free internet in your business as opposed to, say, Starbucks, where you've got to pay, what is it, $3, $10 for a T-Mobile ID for the day. So people will naturally gravitate to where they can get more for less. And so there's an affinity between the community network and independent business. And in the sense that as long as the spectrum is not congested, I think multiple networks can coexist. And in fact, like for example, in New York City, there's a number of different wireless and community wireless ventures that are all coexisting in the same spectrum. So I really don't see competition necessarily between them. I think there was another question.
A major problem on any kind of service network is copyright violations. And I don't want to get into a discussion of whether that's right or wrong, but what ISPs and large carriers have is what's called common carrier status, which protects them from liability. So you get a DMCA violation on your network, then all you have to do is put a stop to it and comply with whatever the requests are. You're not going to get sued. Do these smaller projects, do they qualify for common carrier status, or is that never come?
It's never come up on either of the projects I worked for. I would honestly have to look into what the particulars of that are. But this would be another. I mean, this would actually be another example of the legality that I was talking about, that always follows you everywhere. You know, that it's another. No matter what you do, no matter how grassroots and independent you want to be, all these regulations creep into what you're doing to make it work. Yes.
Yeah, you said you weren't particularly fond of the WRT stuff. What was the major shortcomings that you found with it? Was it weather-related or just flimsy units or what?
Well, it's reliability, really. That Linksys, the Linksys WRT series is really designed to work in an office environment. And when you're installing a hotspot, you're typically installing it in drop ceiling plenum spaces, kind of like this one, or places that tend to have poor air circulation, are dusty, are in general hard on electronic devices that weren't designed to live in that sort of environment. So over time, a WRT that might last years sitting on your desk will last on the order of months in that space because it'll wind up overheating or suffering from any other number of failures just because you're putting it in a space that it was never designed to operate in.
So you feel if that could be addressed in, say, repackaging with filters and fans, the unit could be serviceable?
It's a possibility. It's not something I've actually looked into. I seem to have. It's just a personal thing with me. I seem to be death on WRTs, and the last I've gone through 2.